Okay, thank you guys for investing your time to be here today. We are doing pricing part 6. This will finish it up. I don't remember which page is it on the packet.
I had it marked on 15, is where we stopped.
15, does it look about like this?
Not at all.
Uh-oh.
That's 16.
You had it on 15?
I did.
I think we covered this last time, but we'll kind of clean it up here each of it, so. We're talking about pricing. And remember, if you remember all the way back to the beginning, there was never a question about whether or not you could price a house appropriately, correct? Now, we did talk about how to go through the process to do it appropriately, but the bigger issue that we were dealing with was what? Does anybody remember?
Seller, guiding the price.
Yeah, it's really about that self-discovery process. It's about how we use what process do we use? According to the pricing class, what process do we use?
Is it a 7-step pricing strategy?
It is a 7-step pricing
Okay,
strategy.
what I wrote on the front.
Yeah, the one that you wrote, the one that we practiced in several classes on how to speak to that, correct? Because when we show up, we'll do some recap here. So when we show up, right? The seller generally has 2 questions for us, correct? What are those questions?
How much and how fast?
Yeah, basically, how much will my house sell for? And what are you gonna do to get it sold, right? Like, those are the 2 things that they wanna know when you go to answer those. So we said, when you show up, and one of those questions is, how much can I sell my house for? How do we handle it? Because you'll walk in and the driver wants to know that right away. It's like, dude, I haven't even seen the house yet. Okay? So what was the scripting? What was some of the verbiage that we used to overcome that? Because I'm not gonna get caught in that trap of walking in and giving them a price, correct? Especially now before I toured the house and we sat down and had this conversation. So what verbiage did we use? And this should be going in your objection skill set journals, okay? How do we handle that? How do I deflect that initial question? Nicole gets a break because she wasn't here.
I don't think Carrie does them.
He's throwing you under the bus.
You're vetted, what do you mean? I've been here since.
So the question is, what, I mean, that's a great question, I'm glad you asked. But I'd be doing you a disservice if I answered that right now. I need to take a tour of the home first and foremost, and then I'd like to sit down. And what I've done is I've used my intentional 7-step pricing strategy to prepare this comprehensive list of pricing tools. I would like to sit down and go through those with you, and we will be able to come to what?
An
Agreed upon price that we should enter the market for your home, okay? That or something along those lines is the verbiage that we should be using. Okay, because deflecting, they don't want to get to it, but I had told them, hey, I'm not ready to have this conversation yet. We need to tour the house, and then we have the verbiage for that, right? But also, look, I've been very intentional. I've used a 7-step pricing strategy, and I came up with comprehensive pricing tools. We're going to look at those together, and we are going to come up with what? Fair market value for your house according to today's market. Most sellers should be okay with that. They're gonna understand. They're gonna say, okay, that sounds good. All right, we'll get to that. Don't get caught in the trap of giving them a price. Now, whenever I sit down with them at the table and we went through everything, do I then give them a price?
Around, yes.
Do I?
I don't think you ever
Okay.
they need to do their process.
I'm gonna send Robert back through the videos of the previous. We never want to be the one to tell them price. Why?
Because then it's your fault if something.
Yeah.
is done.
If it goes wrong, then they're like, you told me I could sell this for X, right? Remember, through that process of self-discovery, we're going through the pricing tools, the CMA, we're going through and looking at everything. I'm showing them the comparable homes. You guys know I use highlighters all over mine, right? Green is good, red is bad. So we look through all of that, and what I'm doing is I'm helping them self-discover the houses closest to theirs. Like, these are the homes that are the closest to yours were valued at this. So then when we come to the end of that, I ask them the question, now based off what I've shown you here today, what do you feel the value of your home is, right? Like that, I'm putting it back on them, and they're gonna say, okay, well, based on what you showed me, I feel like my house is valued at roughly this. Now, if they're right on, then I'm like, okay, I agree with that, I think we're right in that range. Now, if they still come back with something way off, then either I did a poor job leading them through the path of self-discovery. Or they're unreasonable, they don't wanna see it, and then I'm stuck with a choice, right? I'm probably gonna go back and try to, lead them down that path again, like, okay, well, let's look at this, show me kind of what you're seeing, cause I wanna put it back on them, they have to be able to justify to me. Why they wanna ask that, correct? I don't wanna be on the defensive, I wanna put it back on them and say, okay, well, based on what we saw here today, can you explain to me? Why you feel your house is worth that, we can go back through the CMA, we'll go back through the photos, everything we need to. And so that, because what it's gonna be is eventually it's gonna boil down to, well, I just think that's what it's worth. Or, well, I have this much money into it.
Is that typically an emotional reaction on their part, and how do you get them to not look at it emotional?
Okay, it could be emotional, and honestly, we all think our houses are worth more than they are, that's just our natural reaction, okay? So there could be some emotional tied to it, the feelings of the house. The only way I can get them off of that is by what? Justification. It can't be an emotional decision. No, here in black and white is the historical data of what buyers have said yes to. Buyers have bought houses similar to yours and they paid X for it. Why would I expect to get anything different, right? But then remember, one of the other pieces of the pricing tools was what? So I have all my sold comps, right? But what was one of the other steps of what we look at? You guys remember?
Was it expired?
Yeah, expires. Now in our market, we don't probably have a ton of expires, so we said,
Shocked you.
instead of expireds, what else could I use?
Drawn and canceled.
I could look at withdrawals and cancels, but what else? What about just days on market, even for the ones that went under contract? Because I also need to look at the property history on those and see, did they have to do price reductions? Did they list here, like, where did they start at to finally get a contract? That can be very telling too, because I might have 2 or 3 houses that sold at the right amount, but the sellers listed them up here. And then they had to go, right? And they sat on the market for 45, 60, 90 days, whatever it might have been. So I want to have that, because if I have that to back me up, let's just say that fair market value for this house is 350. They want to list at 390. And I show them, look, there were 3 other houses in your neighborhood that listed around 380 and 390. Every single one of those sat on the market longer than average days on market. And they had multiple price reductions. Okay, so a reasonable seller should look at that and say, okay, other people tried that, they did not have success. Agreed? Like that would be a reasonable conclusion, like, this didn't work out too good for them. So would it be reasonable for a seller to say, I know it didn't work for them, but let's go ahead and try it? That, no, I agree, kind of like, that's not really a very good idea, that's not a good strategy, it's not a good plan. And if I've done everything I can, I've shown them sold data, I've shown them days on market or expired date, I've shown them all of that, and they still want to say, well, let's go ahead and list it for 40,000 over. You have to make a decision at that point. Remember we talked about that, because we believe in a win-win, correct? And me taking an overpriced listing, is that a win-win?
It's a service to them.
No. Yeah, it's probably a lose-lose. Because there's a very good chance that they are actually going to sell that house for less than what they would have got if they went right at market value. Do we agree? Or right below and did the frenzy thing? Possible. All right, but is it a win for me? I might be able to leverage it, possibly, right? Could happen. Maybe not though.
Is that a
Well,
win
you
if
would,
you're-
and I would tell the seller, like, I would absolutely get sign calls on this, but it wouldn't be to sell your house.
Yeah.
It would direct them, somewhere else.
Could be
potentially.
somewhere else, right? So that is, it violates the core belief that we have in win-win relationships. Okay, and we don't do that. So you have to make a decision at that point. Am I willing to take this listing or am I not? I've walked away from listings before. It's just not worth it. I remember one in particular, I walked away, they were shocked that I walked away. Another agent came in, I knew the agent, that agent, they even looked them up, they sold 50% of their listings. 50%, that means 50% of the people that trusted them to sell their house were unsuccessful. And he took the listing and it sat for 6 months. Didn't sell, and I was like, thank goodness, I didn't have to deal with it, okay, so. Just kind of be thinking through that, you know, whenever you're having these conversations with the sellers, okay? All right, so today it's gonna be dialogue heavy. Because if you remember, everything up to this point in the previous 5 classes. We started out talking about beliefs, why all of those matter, right? What else did we talk about? We talked about the actual 7-step pricing strategy. We talked about how to do that, what each step was. Because you intentionally do all of that, right? Before we even show up. And it all starts with that initial conversation, correct? So we have initial conversation, how we set the stage for everything. Now the assumption is, okay, we created our pricing tools, right? So we have all our pricing tools. We're showing up, we're ready to have the conversation with the seller. Now, we get there, we arrive on time. We have the initial, you guys know how to build rapport, right? You can do 4 dialogues, things like that. You tour the house, okay? And let's talk about that briefly. Before I go into the pricing stuff, what is your verbiage whenever you're asking a seller to tour the home? What do we say?
I look for the highlights, show me what are your favorite features about the home.
Okay, show me your favorite features about the home, okay?
Show me what you don't like.
Okay, show me what you don't like, all right? And what am I doing while we're walking through?
Paying attention to everything.
Paying attention to everything. Am I gauging their disc? Yes, I should be gauging disc, right? Do I have a driver here? Do I have an amiable here? Just an analytical here? Because is that going to shape some of the ways that I speak? Absolutely it is, okay? And we need to be aware of that, so when they're giving me the tour, I can kind of respond appropriately. Because if I've got a high I, I've got an expressive, you know, like what I told you what my downfall was, what, not being excited about housing, because I was a driver, very focused. I knew what needed to happen, I knew the marketing strategy, I knew all of that. But they didn't think I was excited about the house, I lost multiple listings early on because of that, so I need to be gauging this. Yes, I go through the house, I say, look, tell me everything that you love about the house, treat me like I'm a buyer. I can say, are there any things that you have concerns about with your house? Please let me know, and I'll let them know, I'm gonna be taking some notes as we go, and I might even take some photos, is that okay? Okay, so I'm listening to everything, I'm taking photos and documenting it. You're not going to remember everything, I promise, so you better be taking good notes, okay? So we get done with the tour. They've told me everything. I asked the questions, you know, roof, HVAC. I probably already asked some of that during the initial questionnaire, right? We get done. Where do we go? Where do we go to sit to have this conversation? Kitchen table, okay? Do we agree that that's probably one of the best places to go? Yes, I like the kitchen table. I've done it in living rooms and stuff before, but that's just kind of awkward. I don't really like that. The kitchen table, I have my table, I have a place to lay everything out, right? And I have the ability to have this conversation, okay? So, what does the conversation look like? That's the question, okay? So we have the transitional dialogue. Get that off. Maybe not, it's just gonna be there.
You can critique yourself.
Yeah, that's not awkward, right? Okay, so we're making the assumption that I understand the motivation, that I've had a conversation, got the motivation, we talked about that last time, okay? So we have the motivation, they've told us they want to be out of the house. Whatever, okay? Now you have to be careful because some sellers who want to push their prices up, when it comes to time frame, what do they often say, or what do they like to say? I'm in no hurry. You'll hear that, I'm in no hurry, I just want to try at this price, I'm in no hurry, okay? So if you get that, you really kind of got to peel back the layers a little bit, figure, okay, wait a minute, why are we truly selling? And challenge them a little bit on it, okay? Because everybody that wants to sell their home generally, like, no, there's a time frame, like they want to get this done a certain amount of time, all right? So we have some transitional questions. So here's what we could ask, this is, let me just ask, do you think a pricing strategy is important? As agents, what do we think? Is a pricing strategy important and what does that mean?
It is
Yes.
important
Why is it important?
because it is the start of your actual planning process and make sure it's a big portion of it anyway. To make sure that you meet their goals, meet your goals, you perform how you promise and you complete your job to what you've agreed to in the listing contract.
Okay, okay, any other thoughts?
It's intentional,
I like that, it's very intentional, yes.
like you're looking for something else after I was.
Yeah, Shayla, you have that?
Why you saw my. Carried my burning. I think it's so important for us to remember that there are specific words. I think we just get caught up in saying things as to how we. That there are specific words that cause people to stop and pause, because if you think about it, they've been interviewed by multiple people. This is probably the first time that they've heard, unless somebody's gone through one with them, the words pricing strategy. It's a very specific and intentional approach into pricing your home.
Yeah.
That's what I'm gonna say.
Okay, I agree with that. So, and so then let me back up a little bit. Then why is it important for me to ask them this question? Why is that part of it?
I think you're trying to lay the groundwork on coming to the right price
Yeah.
together.
Yeah, that's kind of the crux of it right there. I'm asking this question because I'm hoping to gain agreement from them, like, yes, I think strategy is important. I'm like, great, perfect. Here you go. I can lead you down this path, okay? So when their answer is correct, that they say, yeah, I do think it's important to have a strategy, great. We can just move right on. What we have here is our strategy, right? Here's how we went through the 7 steps to come up with this, and let me walk you through it. Now, if they say no, like, oh, okay, this could be a little more challenging, right? So then I'm gonna have to come back with, may I consult you a little bit on price, okay? So if I was gonna say, can I consult you a little on pricing, and they say, okay, yeah, go ahead. Well, what does that conversation look like?
Gaining agreement, again, the goal is to always
Okay.
gain agreement to then go into the next phase of the conversation.
Okay, so I agree, so I'm gaining agreement, but if I'm gonna consult someone on price. And we've kind of talked about this a lot,
That kind of
Right.
goes back to the, how many days on market, how many times, the
Yeah.
houses in the neighborhood,
yeah,
price drops and things like that.
okay. Yeah, we are looking at that, that's part of it, but homes sell for 2 reasons. That's the core of this, right? So if I'm gonna consult somebody on why it's important to have a strategy here, I go back to the fact that homes sell for 2 reasons, which are what? Price and exposure, yeah, it's price and exposure, that's the 2 reasons. If you wanna have a successful sale of your home, it's gonna come down to 2 things. We need to get the exposure right. That comes down to my marketing. It's important that you hire an agent who's gonna market it properly, correct? And the other piece to that is what? Pricing. If we get one of those wrong, we are not going to get a successful sale of your home, okay? That's why it's important to have this strategy. And then when we get to the pricing itself, what do I have to be able to do with price? I have to justify price. So I need to have that conversation with him, home sale for 2 reasons, then we get the price, and the pricing piece comes down to justification, okay? So I have to lay that groundwork that as we're looking through the pricing tools, they're understanding that we have to be able to justify a price. Who all do we have to justify the price to? The buyer, lender, who else? Seller, the seller's gonna be the one on my team helping me justify. Appraiser, yes. Even underwriters, buyers agents, like, I have to be able to justify this price. Because if it's a good buyer's agent, are they gonna let their client overpay? They shouldn't. Now, are there ones out there doing that? Probably. But a good buyer's agent should be able to look at that house, look up the comps, the same data we're looking at, and say, you know what? That house is not valued, it's not worth what they're asking for. Okay, now, have we been in a crazy market where people didn't care and they were paying whatever? Yeah, that's true. We have to acknowledge that. However, what are we seeing with our inventory right now? What are our days on market doing? They're going up. What is our current days on market?
They're really good.
That's your homework. Where do you find that? ACRAR, remember they send out that graphic? Okay, what about our inventory level? Does anybody know how many months supply we have?
2.25.
2.5, 2.5, okay? That's important that we know that. That does change some things on how we list. Yes,
According
Carrie?
to May, it was 39 days on market.
Okay, so there you go, 39 days. Good job pulling it up quickly.
Right, me.
Yep, so we need to know that, okay? I was going somewhere really totally lost.
Oh, sorry.
Going with that.
Justification.
Yeah, we're talking about justifications. I have to be able to justify, and I have to be able to defend the price that we select. Because just because I put it out there at a higher price, and maybe I do get an offer. But if I can't justify that to the appraiser and everybody else, that it's pointless. Because why? The appraiser's gonna come in low and the dropping price anyway. Okay, so it's about justification. So this is how we're kind of, these are these transitional question here that is really setting the stage for when I go in and I start talking to them about the different steps of my pricing strategy, okay? So here's the justification statement. Robert, take a crack at that one.
It was the pricing conversation, right?
Yep.
Okay. In order to find the most appropriate price entry point.
Oh, wait a second, where are you at? Hold on. Go back one, go back one, justification statement.
What we must remember is the pricing game is all about justification. Therefore, we must put ourselves in a position to defend our list price. For the moment we are unable to defend that list price, we lose leverage. And when we lose leverage, we start leaving your money on the table. Now, to me, leaving your money on the table is simply unacceptable. Wouldn't you agree?
Okay, isn't it amazing the power of what a comma would be? Because the way you read it sounds like, for the moment, we're unable to defend it. But the way it means is, the moment we can't defend it, we're in trouble. Like a little comma there would make a difference. Yeah,
Makes more sense.
I agree with that. Okay, now, Robert, I want you to not look at it. And I want you to give me that.
Okay, so we need to make sure that we can show everybody involved that our price is justified by historical data. And if we can't do that, then that starts taking away from your proceeds. So what we're trying to do is going to defeat one of the main goals in your home sale. And we have to be able to justify the price first and foremost.
Okay, you hit
Put me
on,
on the spot.
yeah, but that's the point, right? I want you guys to be internalizing this. Okay, Carrie, your turn. Without looking at it, I want you to give me, because remember, there's a couple of key things. If it's bold and underlined, that's gonna be like, okay, this is an important component of this part of the conversation. So we see that it's all about justification. We know that, right? What's another thing? Leaving your money on the table is unacceptable. That is what? A core pricing belief that we would have talked about early on. Okay, so I really want to hit on those. And Robert did, he hit on both of those things. Okay. He kind of, the part about we lose leverage, he kind of hit on that too, okay? But go ahead, Carrie, without looking, give me that script.
So we need to justify the price that we choose to sell your home at. Every thought in my head.
Okay, go ahead, take a second.
Okay,
Pull it back in.
It's just because.
I know, but, so we need to justify the price that we've agreed to sell your house at. With that, we need to, oh gosh, what is that?
Sorry.
So sorry.
I'd rather you fumble in here.
I know that
I'll
I'll
the
get,
seller, okay?
Okay.
Yeah,
okay, we look at it.
start again. It's about justification.
Yep.
If we can't justify it, we lose leverage,
Yes.
right? If I lose leverage, then I risk leaving some of your money on the table. Okay, those are my main components.
So we need to justify the price that we've chosen to list your home. if we can't justify it, then we lose leverage with buyers, with lenders, with all the people in the equation. And that could potentially leave money on the table that you don't get. So, what are your thoughts about
Okay, yeah, all right, I'll go with that,
that? Okay.
it's better, okay?
Now she's
Yeah.
breathing like.
and she got a whole new shade of red.
Well, I think the biggest thing to remember too is sometimes we use too many words. I
Yes.
think the less we say, and if we can say specifically these things, then they are hearing exactly what we need them to hear instead of,
The fillers.
yeah. Because you lose people in those, especially if you're talking to the.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, my eyes was glass, so.
Yeah.
So, and to that point, that's why it's so important for you to be confident enough in what you're trying to say. Because generally what happens is we kind of know what we want to say, and we use 10,000 words to say it because we're just kind of fumbling through it. And then like, I don't think I've really gotten that through clearly, so I'm just gonna keep on vomiting here and hope that at some point it sticks, okay? Remember, successful agents know what to say, when to say it, how to say it, and say it without hesitation, okay? Which is why we practice. We study, we practice, we take action, and then we reinforce, right? Because we'll reflect on it. What did I do well? What can I do better? And then I go right back through that cycle over and over and over and over again. That's what sparring is, okay? It's an intentional process.
Even the statement, leaving your money on the table is unacceptable, would you agree? Again, it goes back to think of any other conversations they've had with other agents too, where the agent has said, oh, absolutely, we can do this. Now they're going. I'm leaving my money on the table with that.
Yeah.
Because people don't say it, I mean, they may or may not, but they don't say it with justification, defend. Like, our words, I'm telling you, are powerful when they matter, and that statement right there gets them to be like, I don't think that's.
Yeah, it does too, I think it brings that point to the mind, that also separates you from whoever else they talk to.
1,000%.
Yeah. Yeah, because when I ask that question, I should get, if I'm presenting it correctly, I should get a pretty vehement, like, yeah, I agree, that's unacceptable. That, they're kind of like, that's like, okay, something's not right here, okay? So that's that justification statement. Hopefully I've gained agreement, and then I'm gonna move in. So here's my transition. Okay, Nicole, you didn't get away, like you didn't have to do this one. You're gonna make the next one, okay, so get ready. Yep. So I'm gonna say, great, let me show you the research I've already done. Okay? Does that not just sound impressive? Like, let me show you the research that I've done. Like, I've already put in a lot of work on this. Versus the agent that just pulls out a bunch of MLS sheets and say, here you go, okay?
Or let me get back to my office. And come up with
I'll get
something.
back with you.
Yeah, I'll get back.
Now, there's a caveat to that. There are certain houses that there's some unique, it's like, okay, I'm gonna have to dig a little deeper on this one. Now, that shouldn't be the norm, I would say. Like, if I go into a house in Sterling Hills, I should have asked the right questions, put together the right pricing tools, and I should be dead on, right? I should be. But you may walk into a house and you're like, or it's one that they kind of describe it to you, maybe it's got a little lay-in and pool out, like all these things, you're like, I really just need to see it. Like, I need to see your house. And then I need to be able to come back and spend some more time comparing that. So just remember, there's room for both of those. And the way I set those appointments up is I tell them right from the get-go. Like, they're explaining it to me and I've looked it up and I'm like, man, this one's gonna be a little bit harder. There's a lot of variables I need to consider. I will tell them right away, like, look, I'm gonna set this first appointment with you just so I can come out and tour the home. And then once I've toured it, I'm gonna be able to come back and really do some detailed research. I'm gonna be able to get back with you. And you can do that, like, I'll be back in 48 hours or something like that. For either a phone call, follow-up visit, probably a visit if I'm talking about pricing, so I'm gonna sit down with them and present it, right? So you can buy yourself that time, like, now that I've seen it, I know what I'm dealing with, okay? But that shouldn't be the norm, that shouldn't be your standard MO. If it's a house in a neighborhood, like, you might get some areas like Brookside or Waldo, it's like, I probably need to go see it, maybe, okay? So just be thinking about that, okay? So we're going to need to explain to them what step one is in my pricing strategy. Okay? If you need to, you can flip back and see what step one was, because we covered that, right? But here's my verbiage for it, okay? So. Nicole, I'm gonna let you read that and I'm gonna let you tackle this one.
In order to find the most appropriate price entry point, I implement a 7-step pricing strategy. The first step in my strategy is to identify a value range for your home. For that information, I study what buyers have said yes to and no to in the past buying situation. I've analyzed what has sold and expired in your neighborhood over the past 6 months, and you can see for the sold summary sheet, there are 3 distinct value ranges that exist in your neighborhood. These ranges are determined exclusively by sold price per foot and have little or nothing to do with the quality of each home.
Okay. Do we agree with everything on that?
I was okay until the sold price per foot.
Okay. And we've kind of talked about that. That can be a little bit dangerous, right? Do we factor in price per square feet? Yes, it is something that I consider, okay, but I have always taken the approach that I do that after, and I do that as confirmation of where I'm at. Meaning, I establish my range, the price I think I'm probably at, what does that put me at price per square foot? And I can compare that with other comparables. Agents will make the mistake of using that as a primary focus of coming up with value, and I think that that is a mistake, okay? So when I do ranges, you guys know, we've talked about in pricing classes, CMA classes, generally there is 3 ranges, we can agree on that, unless it's what kind of neighborhood. What kind of neighborhood is not gonna give me the 3 ranges that we look at? It's gonna be your new build communities. Okay, because new builds, you're gonna have 1 or 2 ranges, like that's just the way it's gonna be depending on certain factors, okay? But if I'm in a neighborhood like Amber Hills, Lisa, all of them built between like 92 and 95. Most of them same size, they'll have about 3 or 4 different floor plans, okay? There's going to be 3 ranges in there, correct? Who can remember what our 3 ranges are? Oh, wait.
You hear Reed saying it right now.
Yeah, Bree would spit them out. I'll help you out. The first one is gonna be our turnkey homes. And I'm gonna keep teaching this over and over and over and over until you guys can all spit it out. Alright? Turnkey home, what does that mean? Do what? I know, but my patient's trying to, I can't wait any longer.
Turnkey means it's ready to move in, there's nothing.
Yeah, this sucker's ready to go. It's got all the updates and upgrades that I would expect. For an upgraded house from the 90s. They probably put in the granite, they went ahead and put in some hardwoods. They have the nice wrought iron, they have the white trim, it looks nice, okay? So in Amber Hills, you're probably looking at, 350 to 375. Okay, so there's my top range. What's my middle range?
Something that may need like minor updates, an aesthetic change. Which I don't know your term that you would use for it. Great Wall Town.
Okay, this is
His grandma.
this is the house that you look at, and most everything is from the 90s. With the exception of a lot of, they may have taken really good care, but maybe the roof is new, or maybe you have a new HVAC, all that stuff has been good. But I walk in and the carpet is still from the 90s. It's still got linoleum in the bathrooms and maybe in the kitchen. However, that linoleum is sparkling clean, you can eat on.
So would you call that
Okay.
minor cosmetic upgrades needed?
Yep, there's upgrades needed. Okay. And you'll find a bunch of those over there. It's just the same person's lived there for 30 years. They've taken really good care of it. But a buyer's gonna be like, I mean, I don't like the carpet's perfect, nothing wrong with it, I don't like the style. It's got honey oak trim, and you paint that, and you paint the walls, and you replace the carpet, and put in some granite. Well, it's the same size as this house, they're both in great condition, and I expect to get the same price. It's not gonna happen, okay? So over there, I'm probably dealing with, 315 to 335 if I'm in Amber Hills. Okay, so I've established my second rate. Then what's the third range?
Or a complete remodel, extra effort.
Could be, yeah, can't call it turd, so we'll say fixer upper. That was nice, thanks.
See, I turn it into my home, I'm driving over.
Okay. Fixer upper, that's the one that's from the nineties and the carpet's worn from the dogs. Right, like trims a little bit rough, dings in the walls, like just needs work, okay? Well, we're gonna have a range for that one. With that, okay? So that's what it comes down to, and in a neighborhood, I'm going to establish these ranges. Because all things considered, the houses were built within a couple years of each other, pretty similar in size, right? So it's the features, condition, amenities of these houses that's going to start separating these in these ranges, okay? And now, if I did a good job, remember we do that initial questionnaire with the seller? If I did my job well, should I already have a pretty good idea of where I fall? I really should, based on the questions I asked, I'm like, okay, I'm pretty sure that I'm gonna be right here, all right? Now. When I get there, it's important for me to do that walkthrough to confirm whether or not I was correct, because I might have to adjust on the fly. Because sometimes I walked in thinking I was here and come out I was here, and I was like, oh, this is nice. And more often than not, though, you think you're here, but you come in and you're down here somewhere, okay? So you have to be able to think on your feet on the fly. However, I will have already established these ranges, so I know the values in this neighborhood. I walk in, I say, okay, no, we're gonna be somewhere right in here. And now it's my job to lead them down that path of self-discovery with the pricing tools, so they come up with the same conclusion. Because almost every one of them thinks they're here. Okay, that's just, it's innate in us, like, I got the nicest house in the neighborhood. Really? Okay.
See what the neighbors say.
Yeah, see what the neighbors said, all right? So these are the ranges, okay, so I need to establish these ranges. Okay, I use my 7-step pricing strategy. I'm looking at what solds and expireds, or if I don't have a lot of those, I can look at days on the market, any price reductions, things like that, to be able to show, these other people tried it up here, they ended up here. Okay, we don't want to make that same mistake. Now, 6 months is what an appraiser is gonna look at, but there's oftentimes that I will go back 12. I will go back 12 months, I wanna look at everything that's happened in the neighborhood over the last year. Because I can see the trending of the neighborhood, right, I can see kind of where prices are going. And I can use that data, okay, alright, so Nicole, you read it, now we've talked about it, without looking at it. I want you to fire that one off for me.
To find the most appropriate price, I implement a 7-step strategy. First, I identify the value range for your home.
Sounds like you're still reading.
I am reading what I wrote.
Okay, I'll give you that. In your objection journal?
It's going in there.
Okay, go ahead.
It's a
Sorry, I messed you up.
It's fine. Okay, to find the most appropriate price, I implement a 7-step pricing strategy. First, I identify a value range for your home. I then study what buyers have said yes and no to in the past. And then I analyze what has sold and expired in your area in the past 6 months. As you can see on the sold summary sheet, there are 3 distinct value ranges in your neighborhood.
Okay, and what is our sold summary sheet?
CNN.
It'll be on this, yeah, it'll be on your CMA, it's one of the sheets there, it's gonna have kind of that summary page, there's a market, your size, bedrooms, bathrooms. All that stuff, okay, so that's what we'd be referencing to there, okay. If I use dialogue like that, verbiage like that, does that sound professional? Does that sound like I did something that other agents did? Now, in reality, we might have done a lot of the same thing, but they did not use this intentional approach, and I guarantee you they're not using this dialogue. So already you're starting to set yourself apart from the competition, okay? So we've talked about that. Terry, your turn.
Identifying the ranges is relatively easy. The more challenging part involves understanding why the ranges exist. It's been my experience that the combination of 6 key buying figures determine home's value range. Those features are the number of bedrooms, stories, square footage, year built, private pool, and lot location. So,
Okay.
okay,
Well, let's pause on that one for a minute. Do we agree in using all of these, or is there other verbiage you would want to use for that?
All of the information is very important.
Okay,
Yes, however, I probably wouldn't word it differently.
okay, how would you word it?
You know, I would say I'd put it to them as some sort of way that it was, you know, your home has specific features that we're gonna look at. I'd like to look at, well, we already looked at the neighboring homes and other homes that have sold, and make a comparison to see where you stand. Up against your neighbors that have sold in the past 6 to 12 months.
Okay. Alright, so. If I was using this, I could say something, like some of the features that we really like to look at are what? Bedrooms and bathrooms, you know, how many of those do we have? What is your floor plan? Because floor plan, if I just say stories, I may not get there, right? It's like, what is your floor plan? Because we know, I think we talked about this, certain floor plans are worth more than others, would we agree? You're gonna get a higher price per square foot for a ranch than you would a split entry or something like that, so I could say. Bedrooms or bathrooms, your floor plan, the size of your home, how old the home is, and the pool. Maybe, maybe not, depending on my neighborhood, right? And then, of course, location. Okay? But what is one other thing that I look at? So we have bedrooms, bathrooms, we have floor plan, we have how old is the house, possibly pool. If not, if I have one, the neighborhood's expecting one or not, location, but what else? One is another really big factor that separates. Like maybe this one from this one. Condition. There was nothing on here about condition, I think condition's important. And they need to understand that, because I might have the same features, but if my trim is all scuffed up for my 100-pound dog. Well, I'm gonna have to allow for that, okay? So bedrooms, bathrooms, floor plan, size of your home, year of your home, location, and condition would be ones I think are gonna be pretty important. And it does talk about condition in some other areas, okay? All right. So I can use my pricing tools to lead them down that path of self-discovery. And what? I want to help them identify what?
And great value between the two.
Yeah, the obvious patterns pertaining to what? Those features. So as I start to go through, remember how I said I highlight everything? Why am I doing that?
Draw their attention to the plus.
Yeah, draw their attention to obvious patterns. If you just bring a CMA with a ton of pictures in there, like it can be a little bit overwhelming. That's why I take the highlighters in and I do it on all the photos. If my house does not have granite, and this house has granite, and it may be sold for 20,000 more, like it's got granite in the kitchen, it's got it in the bathrooms, I go and I highlight the granite. The granite is highlighted in the kitchen, it's highlighted in the bathrooms to pull their attention to the fact the house that sold at 370 that you want to use as a comp had granite in the kitchen, it had granite in the bathrooms, and I'll even circle the trim. It's got white trim and it's got agreeable gray paint. Like that is adding to their marketability and it's adding to the value of that house. Do we agree? So that's why I'm trying to pull their attention into these obvious patterns from these houses. Make sense? It's not just showing pictures, it's no, I'm very intentional. Look at this. Let's go to the next one. This one sold for 378. Look at this. It's got this, it's got this, it's got this, it's got this. I'm not dogging their house. I'm just saying they have these features. Okay. So we need to talk about that. It's like looking at these pricing tools, considering all 6 of those items. What patterns are we seeing? Let me help you look at these photos. Okay. You start to see like there's a lot of verbiage that goes into these conversations, right? That's why you practice this, because you don't want to show up on a listing appointment without some of this backlog for sure internalized. Or guess what? You become the typical agent. Could you get by on a listing appointment without this dialogue?
Well, you know, you may not get the listing,
Yeah,
I mean,
may
if
not
you're
get the
gonna
listing.
go up to bat,
Yeah.
you might as well knock it out of the park instead
I
of
agree.
going up to bat.
That's the whole point of what we teach is setting yourself apart. Because you and the typical agent may have came up with the same price, we agree on that. But the key is, I'm getting the seller to take ownership of that price. Remember, we talked about us kind of being a coach and they're our team, like we are a team moving together towards a closing. Versus a typical agent comes out, just tells them this, tells them that, and the seller sits along for the ride, okay? That's why we teach this, and that's why we practice this. And yeah, you're realizing, it's like, man, there is a lot of this conversation, yes, there is. But that's what we try to master, that's why you write it down, that's why you strive to master it. Because once you master this dialogue and you go out, you're unstoppable. All you need is to create an opportunity, it doesn't matter who you're competing with, if you have this dialed in, you're going to win the listings. And do we agree it's a lot of work to get a listing opportunity? Yep, it is, it's a lot of work, so when you go, you wanna be able to crush it. Robert, it's exciting because you're feeling better and better and better about your conversation, right, on your listing. Well, just imagine if you keep practicing, you keep going down this pathway of master, imagine what you're gonna feel like 6 months from now. Your other option is to stay right where you're at now, it's like, there's no growth.
There's a lot of this that. You know, I mean, no lie, I've gone in not 100% prepared, but there's a lot of this that bleeds into it, just naturally. Repetitively going through this, that bleeds into those conversations, I don't have it laid out in a specific step by step, okay, now everybody, we're gonna go to step 2, listen to me and we'll discover together. Just kind of unknowingly put it together and it forms into a very fruitful conversation. I've had, like with that one I've got listed now, I had 2 absolutely wonderful listing meets. Where it was the initial meetup on the house, and then it was a listing visit. So, I mean, and you don't realize that they all come together, if you pay attention, they come together. I know I've stuck a lot of this, not all of it, but there's a lot of this that went into those conversations to get that sign in that garden.
Yeah, and to that point, like if I'm mastering this. And maybe the conversation's gonna flow how it flows, right? But I should know it well enough that I can bring them back to different points at different times. So maybe Robert does kind of move this piece to here, we're still covering it, right? So it's like it's getting covered, but the problem is if I haven't mastered it enough and then they get me derailed and then I'm all over the place, okay, that's what I don't want, right? Okay, so we did that. Step 2. Kind of already alluded to this, right? Who went last time? You're Terry? Okay, Robert, you're up.
We test the logic using expired listings. Now that we have formed some logical conclusions based on what the buyers have said yes to, we need to test our logic on what the buyers have said no to in order to validate our conclusions. To make it easier, I have prepared an expired summary sheet so we can identify the range where each home expired. As you can see, most homes like yours have failed in the 370 or 355 range. Why do you think that is? So after reviewing this information, why do you think the homes expired?
Okay, so there's a lot of potential conversation from this, right? Like just taking this on here, why do you think homes expire? Well, something wasn't right between price and exposure, like that's it, like something was not right between price and exposure. I already had a conversation with them at the beginning of the importance of price and exposure, right? So something there failed, so they should be able to recall and say, well, looks like it was overpriced, and I agree with you, okay? So this says, remember, so step 1 is I had this dialogue, okay? I've let them know these are kind of the 6 things that we're looking at. Let's see if we can identify any obvious patterns. So in that step 1, I'm going through that with them. We talked about that, pointing their attention. And then I move into step 2. Now let's test our logic. Okay, let's test our logic. And you may have some expireds, you may not, but I may use some of the same houses that sold. But now I'm bringing out the point they sat on the market for 58 days. Or they started at this price and sold here. So I'm testing that logic against that data. So they're seeing it in black and white. This is what happened to other sellers that tried to list where I initially was thinking I wanted to list. And every one of them that had the same house as me ended up doing a $20,000 price reduction. They sold it for $20,000 less. Okay, and a reasonable seller would be able to say, I should probably list here, correct?
Is this step only if they have not already agreed to a price, or is this also does it
You could
depend
do it
on-
either way, I
Yeah.
generally only go that route if we went through step one and they're like, okay, I don't agree at all.
Okay.
Okay, well, now we can test it, now you can do it either way. But if I've already gained full agreement just off that first one, it's like, well.
Right.
Next this one here, yeah, so here we go, okay? Okay. If I'm there on an expired listing. If anybody's thinking about working expires and as the market balances out a little bit more, you will see more happen, like there will be more expireds or canceled, okay? So now it becomes much more personal though, right? So after reviewing this information, why do you think your home expired? What are they probably gonna say?
The realtor.
They might blame the realtor, okay, but we have to dig deeper. If they say, well, my realtor sucked, and I say, explain that to me.
They're either gonna go for pricing or they explode.
Yep, either your agent mispriced your home. Or they didn't expose it properly. Now, I will have already done that research. If I'm looking at expired, like, yeah, they went through with their cell phone, we're taking pictures, I'm like, yeah, your exposure is pretty terrible. I'll give you that. But more often than not, it is a pricing issue. And it's an agent who what? Didn't have the knowledge necessary to come in and have the right conversation. And they just took the listing, what the seller said that, yeah, sounds good to me, let's list. Okay, that's generally what you will see. Okay. So I can say I agree, you know, based on this information, we can logically conclude that homes fail to sell because they're either listed in the wrong range or incorrectly positioned within the right range. So let's say, look here, most of these ranges are what, $20,000 to $25,000 off. It's important to strategically price, again, based off those 6 things, okay? So make sure that we're doing that. Okay, we're running close on time here. So we're gonna determine the value range most suited. We did that through what? The comparison of those 6 items. We're looking for those reoccurring themes, right? Those trends, okay? And then we can ask them after we've reviewed everything, and this is a similar question to what I would always ask. Based off everything that I've shown you here today, where do you think the most appropriate price entry point for a home? That was the dialogue that I used. Based off everything that I've shown you here, where do you feel it is? And based off what they say determines where I go next with it. Okay, generally they are like, okay, yeah, I saw all your highlights, I see this, I think we're here or something. I agree, I think that is correct. Okay, so we'll strategically position it within that value range, all right? The next thing that we need to do, okay, so we've presented the pricing tools. We've gained agreement from the sellers that yes, we feel that that is the appropriate price entry point. What other tool should I have prepared and with me? No, we'll get to the disclosure if I get the listing. With active, no. What should I have with me on every single listing appointment? And then I do another one once I receive an offer.
Oh, the financial.
Yeah, seller estimated proceeds
Yeah.
sheet, okay, that should be with you. And you guys should be practiced enough and you do those on the fly, alright? You should be able to sit down, we're professional, we can sit down at the kitchen table and sit there and do one by hand. And then I usually left them with them, and I would take a picture of it, just so I had a copy, I could throw it in my loop. And I would give them the copy of that proceed sheet. Okay, I'm doing that, why? Because I have to verify that it's going to satisfy the seller's financial needs. I'm doing nobody a service if I put a house on the market and based on what we know it's gonna sell for, it's not gonna satisfy their financial needs. Because there may be times where you run all those numbers, you show them in black and white, this is what we agreed, this is what the market said it's worth. If you look right here, this is what you're going to net. Is that going to be enough to accomplish what it is you're trying to do? To purchase your next house, to relocate, pay off debt, whatever it is that going to work for you? And if it doesn't, it's my job as a consultant to say, we might need to come up with a different plan. Maybe we need to just hit the brakes for a bit. Once you spend the next 6, 12 months saving, paying it down, whatever, And then let's revisit, let's see what the market does. You may have to do that, I had to do that before.
How hard was that? Was that a pretty tough conversation?
Yeah, it's hard, because it's kind of like, dang, I'd like to take the listing, however, if I truly believe in relationships and taking care of people, then it makes the conversation very easy, right? Because the mindset of scarcity will try to creep in and say, oh, get the listing. It's not in their best interest, and I can't tell you how much they appreciate it whenever they see it in black and white, and they're like, okay. Yep, we're gonna have to just wait. Yep. But do you think they're gonna come back to you in 12 months? Yeah, you're gonna have them for life. They may have already been on your advocates. Do what? Well, you better be following up because they should be in your touch plan or some kind of follow-up, yes, okay? So just make sure, and there's some dialogue in there for that, okay? Make sure you verify the financial side of it. If you're doing a listing appointment and not doing a seller's estimated proceeds sheet, to me, that is just unacceptable. Okay, and if you don't know how to do them, we'll do more classes on them, we've done classes. You should be able to figure that out, and if I missed by more than 200 on the proceed sheet by the time they close. To me, it's like I failed, like I missed something somewhere, like I should be able to dial it in that close, okay? Because I should be able to know the payoff, I should know the interest rate, so I can figure prorated interest. And I pull the taxes, I can get all of that information. Okay, so I should have that with me, I should be able to sit there and do that, okay? All right. We also need to look at actives, correct? What is our active competition? Because just because my comps are showing me this, the market is fluid, it changes. It may have been this, but guess what? Now I have 7 actives in your neighborhood. Already had a couple price reductions, therefore, if I list above them, what am I doing? I'm helping them sell their houses, correct? Yeah, so I need to also take into account, this is where we agree upon price and verify, does that work with active competition? And as we get more and more inventory, there will be more and more and more active competition, okay? So we have some dialogue right here that you guys can use for that part of the conversation. And our final step. Does the entry point we've selected match their timing needs? Now, the market has been crazy the last few years, so I think usually within a week or two, it is gonna be sold, okay? As it levels out a little bit, days on market are extending. So what that means is if I have a seller that says, I have to sell within 30 days, like I have to, because I'm relocating, they'll wreck my job, or my kids have to be in the school district. Now I also need to verify our price satisfies their financial needs, however, average days on market at this price is 49 days. We're gonna have to look at that, right? Because what does that mean? We might have to do. I might have to go a little bit more aggressive and actually undercut every single active competition in the neighborhood. And you're gonna say, look, in order to guarantee that, we may have to be super aggressive. Let's refigure your finances real quick. Is this still gonna work for you? And if it does, it's like, okay, let's move forward with that, okay? So I have to verify finances and I have to verify the timing. Okay, that is the final step that we go through in that pricing conversation. If agreement has been reached on all the previous steps, the seller will not give an unreasonable answer. Unless they're urgent. Great, all right. If I had agreement all the way through, they're gonna give a reasonable answer. We're not gonna cover this, but I want you guys to read it. It's the final scripting in here. The question is, how will you feel if your home sells tomorrow? Now, in the crazy market we've been in, sellers just expected that, it wasn't an issue, but what if we go back to where it's average to sit for 30, 60 days? And it sells in 1 day. We need to work on eliminating seller remorse, because what's the first thought that goes to their mind? Yeah, underpriced, sold it too low. Okay, so there's some very, very good dialogue in here that's going to help you address that up front, right? Because an ounce of prevention is worth, right? So make sure that you study this and have that conversation. I'm not telling you this is gonna happen, but if it does happen, how are you gonna feel if your house sells tomorrow? Okay? And then that dialogue goes with it as well. And then you have, this is kind of the whole flow of the pricing strategy that we have discussed over the last 6 classes, okay, so you can kind of go back through and see. Any questions? Does everybody feel more prepared as we've completed all 6 modules of this? You feel more prepared to go out and have one of these seller conversations? Yes. Robert says yes,
More
Karen?
prepared, but will be way more prepared once they go through it
Okay.
and then work on the objection journal.
Okay, yeah, get that objection journal fleshed out, and then you can just sit there and you can just script. Get all your practice in, okay? Nicole, you ready for one?
I've been ready.
First day on the class? Okay, all right, guys, thank you for being here.
Thank you.
My pleasure.